China is the only country with both the intent to reshape the international order and, increasingly, the economic, diplomatic, military, and technological power to do it. We are not looking for conflict or a new Cold War. To succeed in this decisive decade, the Biden administration strategy can be summed up in 3 words: invest, align, compete. Competition need not lead to conflict. We do not seek it. We will work to avoid it. But we will defend our interests against any threat.
What a curious paradox. U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken's speech on the country's China strategy, in plainer words, tells that the U.S. is containing China while pretending it doesn't want to. To understand the speech correctly, we need to interpret it in the opposite way. The United States has repeatedly called for strengthening the so-called rules-based international order, but it habitually puts its domestic law above the international law and tries to replace the commonly accepted international laws and norms with the house rules of a few countries. It selectively applies international rules as it sees fit. Otherwise, it just quit. Since the 1980s, the U.S. had once withdrawn from 17 international organizations and treaties, including the United Nations Human Rights Council, the World Health Organization, the Paris Agreement, etc. And it has its own way of keeping order, or should we say exercising coercion. The U.S. has not been at war only in 16 years out of its 240-plus year history. 80% of armed conflicts in the world were initiated by the U.S. since 1945. More than 335,000 civilians died in U.S. wars and military operations in the name of counterterrorism since 2001. What really annoys the China hawks in Washington is the fact that China has been doing what it can to reduce the global governance deficit and make the international order fairer and more reasonable. In this way, it's moving the U.S. cheese, much to their chagrin. Facing a rapidly developing China, the United States has grown increasingly agitated. Yet it seems that Washington is not trying to move ahead by making itself better, but by taking China down. The previous U.S. administration, in grave violation of WTO rules, waged a massive trade war on China. It has blacklisted Chinese high-tech enterprises with groundless charges and slapped self-defeating tariffs on Chinese goods. The U.S. has also intervened in China's domestic affairs concerning Taiwan, Hong Kong, Xinjiang, Tibet, and others, seeking to undermine China's security and stability. Most recently, Washington has been attempting to knit an anti-China alliance in Asia-Pacific through the newly announced and largely vague Indo-Pacific Economic Framework and the Quad mechanism. If the above-mentioned are just some actions, Washington has now written its Cold War mindset into its strategy: invest, align, compete.
美方的对华政策演讲，本质上是运用美国国内外全部资源，对华进行全方位围堵和无底线遏制打压。
Commentator Peter Bernard noted in his opinion piece in the New York Times that the word cooperate was notably absent. Founder of the Progress Network, Xinhua Commentary, wrote that all the things Washington claims it worries about don't necessarily make China a threat to American prosperity and security. In a recent opinion piece on Bloomberg, US-based Scottish historian Niall Ferguson called Washington's grand strategy deeply flawed, saying it scares him that Washington reached a bipartisan consensus that resisting China's rise should be the foundation of American foreign policy. Unfortunately, what sober-minded observers have worried about is exactly what Washington has been doing. It has tried to contain China every step of the way, economically, technologically, and militarily, and smeared China repeatedly with long-debunked lies. As the Chinese ambassador to the United States, Qin Gang, said, China and the U.S. do compete in some areas, but such competition should be fair and healthy, and it should make both sides better and stronger. It should not be a zero-sum game and the winner takes all. At the end of his China policy speech, Blinken claimed that
there's no reason why our great nations cannot coexist peacefully and share in and contribute to human progress together.
Great point, but it won't work if you advocate peace by repeatedly drawing the sword.